Hey, you're listening to Marketing Out Loud, a daily podcast where I share advice, stories, and insights to help you build a thriving professional services business. To subscribe to the show, visit marketingoutloud.fm. So I've been having a lot of conversations in the past few weeks with potential clients for the 90-day pipeline, my coaching program. And you know what? It never ceases to amaze me how much you stand to learn from a conversation with a prospect. You know, I know who my target audience is. I know who my ideal client is. But even now, every time I get on the phone or I have a conversation with a prospect, I learn so much more about them. And I refine my conception of who the ideal client is. And it's a good reminder, even to me, that, yeah, you can map out who your ideal client is. You can put that on paper. But in the end, ideal clients are discovered. Okay, they're found. It's not an intellectual exercise. It starts with an intellectual exercise, and that's important. You got to put that on paper. You have to describe who the ideal client is without constraint, so you know who you're going after. But then you got to go out and find them. And when you go out and find them, what you'll discover is that you'll learn so many things about them, about the way that they think, the way that they behave, the obstacles that stand in the way to them making a decision, their experiences with other providers, other competitors in your space. You'll learn so much more about them that fills in the picture. If you kind of think of it as like your ideal client profile is like it's like a kid's coloring book, and all you really have is the outline. Right. So you can describe them. You can draw lines around to describe how they look, but it's black and white until you go out and have those conversations. When you have those conversations, then you can start coloring in between the lines. And then you have a much more vivid, meaningful, accurate picture of who they are and how they think and what they look like. I'll give you a couple of examples. You know, I had one conversation this week with a gentleman who is in a certain sub-community that includes many of my competitors. So he's aware of who the other coaches are in the space, and he's part of a certain sub-community where there is some competition. And that's one of the communities that I kind of play in. So, you know, he has other options. You know, he's looking at me, he's looking at other providers, and like, that's great. I mean, he's got a few options to choose from, and that's certainly a good place to be. Compared to another guy that I talked to this week who's not part of that sub-community and doesn't know who any of those people are and wouldn't even see them as viable options, because the way that I'm positioned is a little bit different, and he sees a connection with me, whereas there are really no other potential coaches that he could go to in his sub-community. And, you know, I've always known that kind of intellectually. I've known that there is that distinction, but again, there's no substitute for having that conversation, because now I know how sub-community 1 thinks, and now I know how sub-community 2 thinks. And I can see that, look, sub-community 2 is a bigger opportunity for me because there's really no competition and there's no one speaking to them in the way that I am. So that's what you find when you have these conversations. And that's why I really like to emphasize the importance of having conversations with prospects. You have to have a bias towards conversation. A lot of folks like to hide. Okay, they like to hide behind their computers. They like to hide behind their desks. They like to hide in their offices. And they don't like having the conversation unless somebody's really interested in hiring them. They avoid the conversation at all costs. And there's all kinds of stories they tell themselves, like, you know, well, I'm not a salesperson and I don't know how to do business development. And well, they'll come to me when they're good and ready. But the thing is, that's where the learning happens. If you don't have those conversations, you're not going to learn. You're never really going to discover who your ideal client is. You're not going to be able to paint in between the lines, or color rather in between the lines, and get a more vivid picture of who they are. And then you're just going to be kind of reactive, right? When people come to you, you'll deal with them as they come, but you won't really know who you're ever going after. So that's what I wanted to get across to you today is ideal clients are not, you know, they're not made on paper. It's not an intellectual exercise. They're discovered through conversation. So yeah, you have to describe who they are up front so you know who you're going after, but then you got to go out and talk to them. And when you talk to them, you will come out with a much more vivid description and a better understanding of who you're here to serve. Hey, thanks for listening. Do me a favor. If you like what you hear, go on iTunes and leave us a rating and a review because it helps more people discover the show. Thanks so much.